Hello, class. This is International Relations and Global Studies. We are looking at Chapter 1 of Mingst and McKibben. It goes over approaches in IR. Before that, let's talk a little bit about what states are. The first section of the book kind of talks a little bit about actors in international relations, and we went over this last time. We're looking at states, we're looking at corporations, nonprofits, international and regional governing institutions. We're interested in people movements or social movements. What are groups of people doing? What are individuals doing, right? What is a state? So in the last time I said, oh, comparative politics looks within the state, and IR tends to look more at how states behave with each other. It treats states as unitary, meaning that they are one tight unit. There's no sort of division within that unit. For the sake of international relations, we can say that states act as unitary bodies. But what is a state? Statehood has to do with having the authority to govern over a piece of land. It has to do with sovereignty. Who has the authority to govern over a piece of land? We say that is the sovereign. How is this authority established? So one way is being recognized as having that authority by other states. But you have to have that authority from within as well, right? So I cannot just claim to be the leader of the state. I have to have the mandate of the people. So you may have to go to the polls, you may have to run for election. Sometimes there are civil wars in which new kind of political system established, right? You may have to fight a war of independence. So this is how authority over a territory is established. So I mentioned one way is to be recognized as having the authority by other states. So this is important because if you are not recognized by other states, no one is going to deal with you. They will stop dealing with your country at the level of the government, right? We'll see examples of that. An example of a state would be the US as far as international relations. Arkansas, we think, is a state within the US, but it is not considered to be a state as far as international relations is concerned. We now have 195 states in the world. Each is considered to be independent and has the right to self-rule. However, two states don't have membership at the United Nations. One is the Palestine and the other is the Vatican. Some are not recognized as independent states. For example, Taiwan, and some other island states also. Some areas are considered to be dependencies. For example, Greenland does not have independence. Greenland is part of Denmark. For the sake of international relations, Greenland is treated as a territory of Denmark. So how does sovereignty work? Let's look at Taiwan. Taiwan used to be called Formosa. Taiwan became independent in 1941. It was basically established by Chiang Kai-shek and other liberal dissidents from China who fled to avoid arrest by the Maoists. Chairman Mao Zedong was the head of the Communist Party in China at the time. China to this day does not recognize Taiwan, which allied itself militarily with the US and became a critic of the People's Republic of China. So we see Taiwan has, developed or taken side with the US on, Cold War matters. And China and the US did not get along for a long time until 1970s when the relationship became more cordial. So up until that time, Taiwan had a very close relation with the US. And it was recognized by the US, but many countries still do not recognize Taiwan because they don't want to get in trouble with China. Bangladesh. So Bangladesh is actually the country that I'm from, and it became independent in 1971. It used to be part of Pakistan between 1947 and 71, and it used to be called East Pakistan at that time. Pakistan itself was part of India until August 14, 1947. So you see that states become independent through war and partition, and we'll look at these kinds of politics later, but you can see the same territory can change hands as far as, like who's in power. Not recognized by the US. So the question of sovereignty has to do with recognition by other states, right? However, the US opposed the secession of Bangladesh from Pakistan in 1971. So initially, Bangladesh was not recognized by the US. And the US actually tried to send nuclear submarines to attack Bangladesh at some point, but stopped as the Soviet Union sent a nuclear submarine to protect Bangladesh. And so we have this Cold War situation almost developing, but they backed out. So it was essentially the Soviet Union, India, and Eastern European nations that first recognized Bangladesh, and gradually Bangladesh became part of the United Nations and the general community of states. So you see that there's a process that states have to go through to be considered sovereign. The same situation with Israel. Israel was created in 1947. You had an Arab and Muslim nations basically boycotting Israel until very recently. Some have opened up relations, with Israel, but still there's a lot of boycott, and it has to do with a lot of politics. We'll not touch on that right now. But many Muslim countries did not recognize Israel and until the Abraham Accord, which was recently signed. So you see that this kind of process applies to other countries as well. Let's look at approaches in IR in the next slide.